Welcome to session 3. I'm your host, Gustaf. I'm a partner at Gullspång Invest, investing in the next generation food entrepreneurs. Today, we're going to meet 4 startups pitching. We are going to meet with people discussing how to attract talent to this business. We're going to meet some of the best international investors in the food space who are going to tell us about what they're looking for and what they think is the next big thing. And to sum it up, we're going to meet with some of the people who are creating the next companies and the next products in the food space. And I promised to try some of these products. So I'm going to try a plant-based cheese. I'm going to try fish made of something I don't know, but I promised to eat it. And we're also going to talk about cellular meat or cultivated meat grown in labs. So it's going to be an exciting afternoon here. I hope you will join us for the full 2 hours. And my first guest is Sorosh from Noquo Foods. So I would like to welcome Sorosh in.
Thank you.
I would like to give you a hug, but that's not coming for these days.
Yeah.
So we will do like this. And
like we hug the audience.
Yes, get started. Okay. What is Noquo Foods? What are we doing?
Yeah, we just set our new vision very recently.
Yeah.
Our first vision is to be the world's most ambitious cheese. Okay. That means a number of things. So first of all, it means to be superior in taste and in nutrition. It means that we want to be really smart about the resources going into the cheese, and obviously specifically the ingredients and the energy in the process. And want it to be accessible for all. So not just this premium thing. And then finally, we want to be kind of one of the preferred cheeses by chefs and the restaurants.
Okay. So a plant-based cheese better than cheese.
Yes, that's the ambition. The ambition is that, and obviously we are going to use plants. Yeah. That will be a core.
Okay, cool. And you brought some cheese with you.
Exactly.
So I asked actually to get the taste of it. I've never tried this. This is the first time. So tell me, how early is this? Is this a prototype? Is this something that you can put on the shelves?
This is the fun thing about this job and what's challenging about being an entrepreneur. Yeah. You can have a huge vision and talk a big game, but then eventually you're kind of naked with this white chunk of cheese. Yes. And so this is this is our first product. Yes. It is a fermented legume.
And you can't see it here, but it basically looks like it's a piece of cheese. Maybe you can zoom in a little bit.
I think you can, let's try to zoom in. I will just zoom, and then you can
I display it like bring it out. So it looks like a brie or something like that. Or what?
Yeah, and if you eat with your hands, you can also see how it kind of...
I'll pick it up.
Yeah. So you can see it's a bit zoomed in there. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So this is the cheese. What is it made of?
Yeah, it's fermented legumes, so pea and fava beans.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fermented with bacteria.
Exactly, bacteria. Yeah. And so it's very similar nutritionally to a feta cheese. So it's about 15% protein, about 20% fat, and no starch.
I'll try it, and then zoom out a little bit so you can see.
So this won't be like any other cheese you've had. So you have to be ready for that. And
it's good. It's a bit sour, I would say.
Acidic.
Yeah, acidic. Yeah. Yeah.
Every time.
It feels like something like a spread you could put on your fresh cheese or something like that. Almost like that. What is your do you have an idea for your first product on the shelves?
So the aim with this cheese is really to be like the core protein in a number of dishes. So if you think, obviously not hot dishes, but if you think a salad or a bowl, sandwich or a wrap, where you can really, especially if you go for something plant-based, you really, cheese is always the solution when you drop out the meat. Yeah. But then, it's just really difficult to get that plant-based experience with the bite you get, with the acidity, the active salt, the umami.
And how do you go about making it? What does the day look like in a food tech startup? Is it really?
Yeah, I'm having the time of my life. So I used to be in software, but for me, it's really intriguing. Right now, we're really obsessed about the product. So we are doing lots of tastings. So the challenge is on one side, the product itself. So what should the product be?
Yeah.
And how do you know if it's good enough, being what you want it to be?
Yeah.
So, and the second part is, can you make that what you want at scale and maintain the quality?
Okay.
So there's like a constant battle. So on one side, like today, just here, there's some amazing chefs at this event. So we were just here now having a number of tastings and getting very granular feedback on everything from acidity to salt levels to the texture, various components.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we're talking to a potential factory tomorrow that can produce for us. So then it's, you know, a large number of other things.
And where are you on this? Like, are you still like iterating a lot of prototypes, or are you?
We are. I think we're zooming in. We're definitely the feedback is still a bit scattered. I think, as it will always be with food, but it's definitely going up and being kind of where we want it to be.
Yeah.
So I mean, we hope to launch this year to selected restaurants.
Okay.
So
already this year.
Already this year.
Okay.
And then to be in this larger scale production early next year.
And I mean, there are already plant-based cheese out there. So what's wrong with that? Why do we need another plant-based cheese company?
I mean, they are really not that tasty more than anything else.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're just not. They're not suited. If you eat cheese, you're not really going to appreciate those products.
So it's about for taste.
Taste predominantly, and they are kind of the classic super fake product where you've tried to mimic something and then you've kind of fake added some flavoring to make it taste like something it's not. And I think and this is not just like my personal opinion, but usually people say, oh, it's very rubbery or plastic and the flavor is just very flat or just,
So the taste is one thing. What about when your cheese be possible to melt and you get this kind of cheese?
This cheese is not made for melting. No? It does hold well. You can fry it actually. It becomes really nice. Yeah. But it's not designed for that. So there's plenty of cheeses, obviously.
And how would you compare that to tofu, for example, or other fermented plant-based ingredients? Is it very close, or is it?
No, I would say this is much more dense and has a very different bite to it.
And are you going to stop at cheese, or is this the first product and you see other products?
We want to really make it with cheese, and then so there's plenty of cheeses. If you just think of the melting cheese market, I mean, imagine the number of pizza chains. Burger
How big
chains.
is the cheese market?
It's 100 billion euros.
100 billion euros.
Yeah, and the current
plant-based.
That's a lot of cheese. The current cheese market, plant-based cheese market, is 500 million. So it's like 0.5%. Yeah. Which is very marginalized. We had a meeting yesterday with a big retailer who's in 30 countries, and they said they have no single plant-based cheese on the shelves because they just don't think they're good enough in quality. So the opportunity, it's kind of like discussing the the oat milk market 5 years ago. It was not defined. I think there's just all the work.
And restaurants this year, when do you think we'll have products on the shelves? How long does it take?
On the shelves when
can I buy this at?
I think sometime late next year. I don't know. It's I mean, I have a lot of respect for the food industry. It is so bloody complex with quality. Obviously, the whole the classic, like, some days we feel like this is just going to explode and take over the world. And other days you're like, you have no idea if people are going to like it.
No, really cool. I like it.
We don't know
already with this early prototype. I'm looking forward to buy it in stores and switch to plant-based. Thank you for coming. We need to
Thanks for having me. Absolutely.
Thanks a lot. And,
thank you.
Say goodbye to Sorosh, and we will welcome Leo from Cellular Revolution, who is attacking the animal-based space kind of from another perspective, not plant-based, but with actual meat. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing at Cellular Revolution.
Yes, I'm working at Cellular Revolution. So we are a company developing enabling technologies for the culture meat space. So we're developing technologies in the form of a bioreactor that culture meat companies can use for scaling of their production in the coming years.
And cultured meat space, cultivated meat space. What is that exactly?
Well, cultured meat, I mean, it's a common phrase for a lot of ways of how you grow meat outside of an animal, basically. So it's growing meat in a bioreactor or in a laboratory setting or in a manufacturing setting. So it's growing cells, which can become meat outside of the animal.
Yeah, so you grow meat, but it's not as muscles, or is it the exact same cells?
Yes, so you use exactly the same cells. So you extract the stem cells from a cow, from a pig, extract them, and you grow those cells. So actually, as an end product, your meat or your minced meat or your sausage that you make is exactly the same, because you don't use plants, for example. You actually use real cells, so you get the same product.
Yeah, but you are a business-to-business company, like building the technology that can make this at scale, right?
Yeah. So we are a business-to-business ecosystem company, which then supplies the technologies to the B2C culture meat companies, who will then supply the consumers.
Yeah. And more exactly, what is a bioreactor? You're saying what is a bioreactor? Can we get a piece? Is it big, small? Can put it on the table? Do I need to build a house around it? Or?
So bioreactor is you're actually mimicking the cow or the pig, of course. But instead of having the actual live animal, you put it in a steel tank, for example. So a bioreactor for culture meat production. You can relate it a bit to production of beer. It also uses big sort of vats and grows beer inside of it. Our bioreactor is at the moment a bit smaller because we're doing small scales of test production. Yeah. So it's about a liter in size, and it fits on your desk. Yeah. And it allows you to grow the cells in a sort of a situation that mimics the way it is done normally or naturally in an animal. The way we are doing it different, normal bioreactors, you will put the cells in the bioreactor, you put a media, which is the food in there. Yes. And then, for example, you close it, you stir for a few days, and you get it out, you clean it, and you start again. So we have a novel method, which is a continuous system. So instead of having to open up and start again every time, we have an ongoing steady cell production, which is much more close to how it is in the human body, like a human and animal. You do not wake up tomorrow morning with 1 million cells available to do whatever. Slowly, continuously, every second produce cells. Yeah, okay. And that's also the way how our technology stands out and is better than.
So it's basically a bioreactor where you can harvest meat continuously out.
You can harvest the cells out continuously, and then the next step actually would be putting them on the scaffold on the surface and going it into a texture.
Okay. And how far off is it until I can try this at a restaurant or? In the shops, buy it in the shops?
So commercially available is still a few years away. At the moment, there's some companies doing some demo days and they're testing it for a select group of people. Yeah. In Europe and also in the States, for example, you need to go through regulatory processes, which takes at least a year after dossier submission. So you will not see it anywhere in Europe, at least for at least another year, because the process takes a year. Initially, probably very high-end boutiques or restaurants. And before you actually see it at your ICA, at your Tesco, at your local supermarkets, because a lot of things need to be overcome. You need to be able to produce the meat at scale.
So what are the main challenges for putting products on the shelf? Yeah. So what are you working on right now to fix kind of before that is real?
So to fix those hurdles, I mean, the biggest hurdle, as sort of touched upon it, is scalability. Yeah. So you need to produce a lot of cells, a lot of products, and you need to make it affordable, of course, because at the moment, everybody sort of knows and figures out how to grow cells. Yes. That's not really the problem anymore. The problem is how to grow enough, so how to grow at scale, and how to make it affordable. Because, of course, you need to compete with plant-based and conventional meat at supermarket scale. So this has to become really cheap, basically. And that is the biggest challenge at the moment. And that's why these enabling technologies like bioreactors come in to make sure that you can produce more at scale and lower production costs. So that's really the place where we're at now is how can you move from the lab, from the science to actually something you can properly commercialize at scale. And then, of course, the regulatory pathways need to be overcome. You need to get your approval. Consumer acceptance, of course, might be an issue in some regions, depending on also. I mean, not necessarily.
Do you do tastings with? Have you done tastings with end consumers, or have you seen the reaction?
Yeah, so ourselves we have not, because we are in the B2B space, but there's companies in the Netherlands, in the UK, in the US that have done successful demo days with customers, with investors.
Yeah, but I think the first demo was in 2014 or something like that, so it's quite a while ago. So
so this is a long while ago.
But do you think we're getting closer to?
Yeah, I mean the prices have gone down. The first burger back in 2014, which was shown by Mark Post, Dutch researcher in London back then. I think it costs about $300,000, give or take, for that one burger to make.
Okay, yeah. It's an expensive burger.
Nowadays, the price, I mean, you can take a few zeros off at the moment, but it's still not enough to really get at supermarket levels, for example.
Okay.
But we're getting closer.
And what do you think are the first products that we will see are based on?
So the easiest to make is a mince or sausage. You know, burgers, sausage, chicken nuggets. So anyway, we sort of have processed meat is the easiest because it's the cheapest to generate.
Yeah.
If you really look at so whole muscle tissue like the chicken breast or your entrecote, that's much more complicated to make, and will take longer to also get competitive.
Yeah. Interesting. And after the minced, like how do you get to a steak or something more like a fillet or something?
That's complicated.
Is it even possible?
It is possible.
Okay.
Anything eventually will be possible. Something
it's a matter of time. Yes.
Yeah, it's a game of years and even in some cases maybe decades.
And investments, of course, it's not. Yeah.
Yeah, and the scaffolds in the coming few years will make a big change in how you can produce the whole muscle tissue.
Yeah. Okay, because meat is not just the muscle cells; it's a lot of fat.
Exactly. So you need to combine fat and tissue and other things, and you need to combine it in the right way that, for example, looks like a nicely marbled steak. Yeah. Which of course takes a bit more effort than the meats.
Talking about fat, I met with this company who actually went for cultivated fat instead of meat, and to go after like foie gras and those kind of products, high price products. Is it easier or harder to make cultivate fat, or is it a difference? Or
well, in the end, it all again is based out of cells, of course. So the way you grow the cells. Generally speaking, which it will depend per cell type, per animal, per company. Fat often is relatively easier to make.
Yes.
But not always.
Okay.
So there's a lot of nuances in the cell type, in the animal, and the way you grow your cells. In some cases, you can grow your cells in suspension, which is so they don't need to adhere to a surface, so it's very easy to grow large volumes.
Okay.
Other types of cells really require adherency, so they need to grow on a surface.
Okay.
Which makes it harder and more expensive to grow.
Okay.
Many fat cells actually can be grown in suspension, so that makes it easier to scale up volumes, to get the yield, and then, for example, mix it in with other products.
And in the future, we're talking about scale here. Is it all about scaling and get the cost down, and then volume products to spread the cost on a lot of sausages, so to speak? Or how do you envision the future? What
that is. I mean, that's really a vision, and not so much a statement as in this is how it's going to be.
Yeah.
How I always like to put the analogy is sort of the beer industry. You have your bulk, your 80-90% is the big beer companies like Heineken, InBev. They produce the bulk of the beer.
Yes.
Which you would say they produce the sausages and the mince. And then on the other hand, you will get some more specialized restaurants or local places say, okay, we want to take the craft beer approach.
Yeah.
They'll say, okay, we have a cow up in the north of Sweden from a heritage cow, specific breed. We take the cells from them, and we're the only restaurant in this specific area or in the country even that has this exact type of meat. So then you can make a novelty product that's like localized and special.
So like artisan cultivated meat.
Exactly.
From the cow in the backyard.
Exactly. From the special.
It's like this, this old story from the old gods of Sweden, where you kill a pig every night, and then you ate it and it reappears. So you can actually eat the same pig over and over again. Is that what
exactly?
Okay. Fantastic. What about the plant-based? I mean, we see a lot of investment in plant-based. Will cultivated meat have a place, or will it already be replaced by cheap and tasty alternatives?
So I see there's a place for all three to coexist: so plant-based, cultured meat, and conventional meat sources. The market for food and the market for meat, it's so huge. There's room for everybody, of course. Plant-based is, of course, it's pushing now into the markets because it's easier to produce in a way, and you don't need regulatory approval. Yeah. And that's, of course, a longer history already of being developed over the last 20, 30, 40, 50 years, of course. Cultured meat will mainly take away some of the market share from conventional meat products, but the global market for conventional meat is $1.6 trillion. So I would say cultured meat takes, in the next 10 years, 10% of that. That is billions and billions. Yeah. I mean, the food industry as a whole is just, I mean, you can't imagine how big it is. So there is room for everybody. I mean, in my ideal way is plant-based, cultured meat, and then if plant-based and cultured meat, for example, can replace some of the real intensive factory farming, that would be great. And that the normal farmers will go more into sort of biological, ecological, sustainable farming.
Yeah.
So you get rid of the real sort of bad farming, bad conditions, and safety issues and pollution.
Yeah.
And you focus only on the good things.
Yeah.
And then it can really coexist.
Oh, interesting. If I were the manager of a meat company, what should I do, or what are the Tyson Foods of the world doing right now? Are they feeling the threat, or are they curious, or what are they doing?
Well, I think many of them are still a bit in the waiting phase. The industry is not really as established yet that it's for them really interesting to go in. They probably need another few years to really put some big bucks behind it.
Yep.
At the moment, it's more the game of the researchers, the startups who are really sort of pushing the first development. In the coming few years, of course, once you start looking at commercialization, the bigger players, the big food industry will come in, either start their own businesses, start investing in the companies. Some of them have already made investment in cultured meat companies. Yeah. So it's something that's happening. We're not really at the phase that the real big investments are made. That is something that will come in the next few years.
And are you already in discussions with your potential customers or are you still at the prototype stage of your bioreactors? Or where are you in this?
Okay, so we developed our first prototype, which is up and running since July of this year.
Okay.
So that was for us the biggest milestone.
How long did it take for you to kind of get to that stage?
Well, it's a bit hard to say. I mean, the company was incorporated in 2019,
yes.
But the R&D where the company is built on was already a few years of research in the making at Newcastle University. Mm-hmm. So it's a few years of basic research, and then we started the company, and then within a year we actually had the bioreactor ready. Yeah. So actually things after company formulation has been going rather quick. We are a year to a year and a half away from our first MVP bioreactor, so first commercial viable product, and then we'll be able to start commercializing that and sell it to potential cultured meat companies, cell therapy companies, anybody trying to grow large amount of cells.
Okay. Cool. And you need to kind of get the cost down, the yield up per reactor or per.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
So yield up, cost down, deal with some regulatory issues, of course. Yes. And the main thing is that the industry needs is just getting investments into the space.
Okay.
Because without money, nobody can do the research.
Okay. One issue when it comes to plant-based, and also I guess for you, is what you can name the products. Yeah. Can it be a burger, or has it? Do you call it disc? Or can it be a cylinder or a sausage? So do you have that kind of issues?
Yeah, it's even different, of course, because plant. Okay, one is a plant, one is meat. Yeah. So you can say something that should be different because it's not exactly the same. Yeah. The problem with cultured meat is it's just like meat. It's based out of cells from an animal. Yeah. So in a way, it's 100% the same, molecularly, texture-wise. Yeah. But of course, it's grown in a different way. So there is a chance, or there is ongoing discussion, especially in the US, about how you should name it in the future. Can it be called meat? Should it be called cultured steak or cultured sausage? Or should it be a different name? So of course.
Or the animals try to call it fake meat.
Yeah, fake meat.
That's
meat.
what the lobbyists are trying to get.
There's different ways that want to do something. At least I think 100%. You should at least be able to distinguish plant, cultured, and beef, because you need to make an informed decision.
Okay. That's Thank you. Important. It's very exciting. Thank you for coming. We are now going to move on and see some pitches. I'm soon going to let in the first startup pitching. And he's actually working with real meat, real bioreactors in the form of natural bioreactors in the form of cows. So thank you for joining, and please listen. And so the next 15 minutes, we're gonna hear some pitches from 3 startups, and it's like a short pitch, a few questions, and then we move on to the next startup.
Sure. So greenhouse gas emissions from cows represent about 5% of the global greenhouse gas emissions, and this is just cows farting and burping methane gas. That is, for reference, more than twice as much emissions as all the world's airplanes combined. This causes a number of problems. First of all, the obvious problem of global warming, which is an existential threat. But secondly, that the dairy industry and the meat industry hasn't had solutions to reduce these greenhouse gas emissions previously. And at the same time, the brands that are selling these products, they can't offer people sustainable ways of buying those products without a massive behavioral change. And we reason that we simply can't afford to wait for people to stop eating meat and drinking milk. And we're not even sure if that's the right thing to do. So, thankfully, they have discovered that this red seaweed, as you see here in the picture, which looks like this in the raw form, called Asparagopsis taxiformis, can reduce up to 90% of methane emissions from cows if you feed it at 100 grams per day. This thing you see here in the background is about 100 grams. This is also roughly 100 grams, but this is not dry. So we decided to make this into a product and get it out to as many cows as we possibly could as fast as possible. So we now have this solution approved by the EFSA, like the European Feed Administration. And we've seen that it actually increases the animal productivity by up to 20%. So this is great because this allows us to actually create a business model for this solution to get it out to farms, because farmers need economical incentives to use this. So the challenge, we figured, is two things. We need to both produce this at scale, and we need to find a business model for the farmer. So we started developing a factory in Lysekil on the west coast of Sweden, where we're producing a blueprint for this production, which is in the form of bioreactors. And these bioreactors will then use the software, if you will, that we're now developing in the lab here at Karolinska. And together, they form the production recipe, the Coca-Cola recipe, if you will, for the production factories that we're now working on. And as you can see, the cows simply can't resist the smell of the seaweed, so they're flocking around the factories. And how do then farmers make money off of this reducing methane emissions from cows? We've seen three ways of making money, and it's like a three-stage rocket. The first, most obvious one is a consumer premium. So consumers demand sustainable products, and I just read a post by Bill Gates yesterday from his blog called Green Premiums, where he explains the concept of green premiums, which is basically paying a premium to make the product you're buying or consuming less bad for the climate. So we believe that consumers are willing to pay to methane reduce their milk and meat products. And secondly, there's a productivity increase, as I mentioned in the beginning. And thirdly, in the long run, we hope to get this out at a scale big enough to enable subsidies, like in California, where they've already legislated that you must reduce methane emissions from cows.
Great. We have 1 minute left.
Yes. And as you can see, this is very beneficial across the entire value chain. Both the farmer and the beef and dairy companies and the food retailers benefit from this, and the consumers who also demand sustainable products. So we put together a team. We're now actually 7 or 8 people on the team. You can only see 6 of us here. And we're working full time to produce this seaweed at scale, which is a big challenge, but it's moving forward, and that's what we're doing.
Thank you so much. And now the time is up. Of course, we have lots of questions we would like to ask, but we have to do that in another session. Thank you so much for joining, Leon. Good luck. Sounds great. The cows love it. They get more productive, and you reduce climate gases at the same time, greenhouse gases. And the best of all worlds. Thank you very much for joining. I'm going to let in our next pitcher, Jeremiah, from Spec-Imaging.
So we are a company based on the diagnostic of liquids, which is a spectrophotometric technique. And usually, so what you do is you measure the absorption of light, and then you get a color or a concentration. The problem is, once you have particles, this equation is not valid anymore. So you measure wrong concentration or wrong color. So in the conventional technique, you cannot measure turbid liquids. And if we now look at, for example, the brewing process, here we turn natural ingredients into delicious beer. And when we do that, and we do it a second time with the same parameters, it can happen that we have, even though the parameters are the same, we have a different outcome. Why is that? It's because the quality of the raw materials might fluctuate. To compensate for that, brewers measure the color of the beer afterwards, and then they can assess it and compensate for fluctuations. The problem is you cannot measure that inline. You need to take out the beer and measure it. and you cannot measure it during the whole process during the fermentation. Our proposition is an advanced optical technique where we modulate the light, and then we can get rid of the multiple scattered light. Thereby, we can measure the in scattered media. Our device, Motospectro, we don't need any dilution, and we don't need a reference to that. We have two products. One would be a tabletop system, which already works, and then later on also an inline instrument, which is based on the tabletop system. There are different applications, so we have markers such as colors, pigment, concentration, the compounds of a product. And then what we can measure is beer, which I already mentioned, wine, honey, basically any turbid liquid. We already did market research. We talked to a local brewery in Lund, where we are from, and the brewmaster there said that our idea would be a game changer for the brewing process. The second company we talked to is a brewery in Germany, and they said that color measurement tend to fluctuate from product to product, and the reliable method is still missing. And if we can back up our claims, he would rent our instrument tomorrow. I am the CEO of the company. I'm the only one working full-time, and our device is based on Edward Brockel's research, and we are also an LU holding company. So we have Richard Sjöström from LU Holding, who is our chairman and the LU Holding representative. Our plan is to give away prototypes next year. So I would encourage all of you to sign up, and then we will select a few companies who could help us pilot testing our product and give us feedback. And with that, thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for your pitch. Your time is up, so we don't have time for questions this time either. So sign up if you're interested to participate in the study. Last but not least, startup pitcher today, Cornelia from Rebel Meet.
Hello, thank you very much. Do you hear and see me?
Yes, yes.
Everything's perfect, great. Thank you. Hi from Vienna. I'm Cornelia from Rebel Meet, and we are committed to provide the most sustainable, delicious and nutritious meat experience out there. So we achieve this by developing and marketing blended meat products with the end goal to also offer cultured meat products. And these products, we combine animal-based and plant-based ingredients in a new way and to create healthy and meat alternatives. We are currently on the market in Austria. We're selling the patties in like 2 patties in 1 package. What's really important to us is sustainability and also transparency. So we, for example, have on the package directly a QR code where you can scan, and then you can check where the meat is coming from, where all the plant-based ingredients are from, and why they're so healthy and delicious. And why are we doing this? Why are we blending meat if we could just go plant-based? So there's something called the carnivore's dilemma, and we want to eat less meat, but we also know we all love it. It's delicious, it's tasty, and it's just very traditional. So when you go to your friends, you have barbecue, and it's something that is still for 90% of the people at the center of the plate. And we think that having normal meat replacements already out there, a lot of them do not cater to the real needs of the customer, which is, for example, a short ingredients list. When you look at the normal meat replacements, they have very long ingredient lists. Most of the things you find in there, in the products, you would not find in a normal supermarket. So for us, it's also very important to make these products with the consumer in mind, and the consumer should know what they're eating and what is really in there. With the meat together, it's very important to use organic meat for us. So we really know where the cows are coming from, which farmers we are having the cows from. And so we offer 100% natural product in the end. And as I said, we're in Austria right now in 350 retail markets, but our goal is, of course, to go out there, go to Germany next year, and then hopefully to Sweden. So my call to action to you is, if you can help us to come to Sweden, if you know any manufacturers, farmers, retailers out there in Sweden that would like to have this innovative product, please just write me, and yeah, I hope we can get it to the market soon.
Yeah, sure. Everyone in the audience, please help out with connections for Cornelia. Two questions. Where are you at in terms of revenue, number of stores you're in, or How far have you come with the
So currently we're in 350 retail stores. We're in about 20 wholesale stores and also 25 restaurants. So we basically also sell directly to restaurants. And revenue, we have about 100,000 until now. So we were founded last year, so it's still, well, not super early stage, but like our first year of being in the market.
Okay, we have a question from the audience here. With what do you blend the meat?
So currently,
yes, sir.
Currently in these burgers, the first product is blended with mushrooms and millet. And our next product that we actually had a tasting today will be sausages, and then also minced meat, which will probably be on the market next year around Easter. And then we bring some more vegetables in there, but we didn't finalize the new recipe, so.
Okay, and the final question: what's your magic? What's your secret? How do you avoid being copied by one of the big food companies making similar products?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, if someone wants to copy us and bring blended meat into the world and save all the meat and animals, I would be actually happy about it. But I think the most distinguishable factor for us is that we're really always organic and regional. So if we go to Sweden, we would like to work with Swedish meat, for example. We do not have any conservatives in there and no artificial flavorings. So really only the 4 ingredients of meat, mushrooms, millet, and spices.
Okay. Thank you, Cornelia. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
And thank everyone for listening in. We will take a short break now for 15 minutes and contemplate on these exciting startups and the other things we've seen so far. And then join us back in 15 minutes where we'll discuss how to attract talent to this industry, and also meet some investors and talk about what they're looking for and the next big thing. So we start again at 15:15. Thank you. So we're back for the second half of this future food companies and products track, and where we will be meeting the people who are actually creating these companies and these products and the culture we want in the companies of tomorrow. So the first session is with ladies of FMCG. We have Sara with us, and we're waiting for Anna and Veronica to join. Please tell us, what are you doing?
What are we doing? Yes, I think maybe I should start with defining FMCG. That might not be clear to everyone. So fast-moving consumer goods, and that industry includes retail, food service, and all companies that produce, sell, or distribute food and service to retail and food service. And this is an industry where the majority of the consumers and shoppers are women. And there's also an industry where a lot of women work. But this is not reflected in companies' key positions and also higher hierarchies. So Ladies of FMCG is a professional network for women in this industry, and we are based in Stockholm, Sweden. And we want to contribute to a fair distribution of power, influence, and resources between women and men. We have currently 2,400 members, and these are active members. They want to talk about career, they want to do business, and they want to be inspired and develop. So what we do as managers of Ladies of FMCG is to create different kind of forums and events where these women can meet and interact and network.
Okay, and these members, female only, or can I join? No.
Yeah, well, it's a female network. Okay. So all the members are currently women, but everyone who feels passionate about contributing to gender equality are more than welcome. Yeah. So I look forward to your member request.
Yeah, okay, thank you. I might apply. Why is this important for the companies? I understand why it's important for your members, but what's in it for the companies, and why is it important for the industry?
Yeah, well, we do a yearly survey among the members where we ask, would you recommend your employer? So it's a net promoter score, an NPS. And the goal with this survey is to create a common index for the industry, so that the companies and the industry as a whole constantly improves in attracting and keeping talent. And this year we also asked the question, do you perceive your employer to be gender equal? So meaning, do you perceive your workplace being equally distributing power, resources and influences among women and men? And only 40% of women perceive the workplace as gender equal.
Is it only women in the survey?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it's only women because it's only among our members, but there is equal research is done. I saw one from 2018 made with food industry, with also women and men, and they had the same result that 40% of the women see their employer as gender equal, whereas 70% of the men see their employer as gender equal. So there's a big difference.
That's a difference.
But what's interesting is also that there's so much research that show that employer engagement is very strongly linked to the success of a company. Companies that have a high level of employee engagement are more successful, they have higher profit, and they also have a stronger pace of innovation. So what we see in our survey is also a strong correlation between those who find their employers to be gender equal are also much more likely to recommend their employers. And we also see the opposite, that those who don't find their employers to be gender equal are much less inclined to recommend their employers.
Yeah.
So,
I see. And what's the connection with innovation? What's the cause and effect there that you see? It's interesting.
well, it is linked to the level of engagement. Those companies who have engaged employers have a higher level of innovation, and also the quality of innovation is higher.
Yeah.
So that's it's key. So we can really in this survey see that if you are gender equal, you have a higher level of employer engagement, which it's crucial for your future success of your company.
And Hanna, you are from the industry and you have leading positions running companies. So this should be at the top of the agenda of all these companies. So what's the state of the industry? How do the management of the companies recognize this topic at the moment?
Yeah, I agree. It should be a priority to the management teams. And we don't see it as high up on the agenda that we would like it to be. We think the first reason has to do with attitude. A lot of that is equality is seen as a problem, like an issue or a task that needs to be addressed and taken care of. And in Sweden, at least, we have a labor law that obligates us to make equality plans, etc. And this is great, but it's also seen as a problem and not the possibility to make a company even more successful than it is today. And this attitude leads us to the next reason. And it's also that the equality plans ends up at the HR functions and stays there. And to make it happen, you need to work strategically with attitudes of the whole company to create an inclusive culture and leadership. So it is possible to be more successful if you are aware and have the knowledge about the quality and the possibility it brings. But we often end up having HR policies and plans that are just made because you have to, and not because you see the business opportunities behind it.
So instead of seeing equality as a problem, you see diversity as an opportunity. And
yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the third reason is also connected to our industry. That is, we have a lot of women working in this industry. The majority of the workforce is women. So the quantitative equality is not the issue, but still this is not reflected in top level positions. And in qualitative equality, meaning that we see in our index that women do not experience the same opportunities as men.
And Sora, you're not from the FMCG industry, you're from the tech industry, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. What do you see coming from the outside?
Well, I mean, if I compare IT with the food industry, the main challenge in IT has always been, and still today is, about attracting, recruiting, and retaining women at large. So it's still heavily male dominated. It's a challenge that IT, despite it being an innovative sector, hasn't been able to resolve. But when I look at food industry, and it's basically to what Hanna's and Veronica's points again, there's a majority of women working there, but not reflected in the top levels. So this glass ceiling that we know exists in many different parts of society and different sectors also is very much alive in the food industry, despite then the pipeline actually being there. And I think just from the outside as well, it's really about, kind of wasting an opportunity, because it is about pulling from the entire talent pool, which I don't think is happening today. So organizations are missing out on actually having competent, people, so women in this case, really being able to climb through the organizations to the top.
Yeah, and you're also a consultant helping companies making change. So yep. What are the actions that need to be taken? Here and now.
Here and now, I'd love to be able just to give a one-size-fit-all answer, but it really depends. But I would want to call out 4 things. First of all, just recognize the fact that for any change to happen, you can't lean back. So this topic needs to be high on the agenda, and needs to be owned by the CEO and by the leadership team, and not just pushed aside. Number 2 is to really make the efforts relevant to your organization. So, depending on what organization you're part of, you're going to be wanting to do different things. You want to make the work relevant to you. So based on that, you can then go into action. Number 3 is to listen and to learn. I mean, ask women what they perceive as challenges. Use the survey that ladies have taken and learn from it. And then number 4, make a plan. Start to act, follow up, and keep the focus.
Okay, so take it seriously, investigate why it's relevant to you and in what sense it's relevant to you, and then listen, and then start doing stuff.
Yep.
And hire great consultants, of course.
Of course.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. So I want to go back a little bit to like you said that their companies is already equal. Have equality. Is that there's a difference between ages? I would think that men also wants to work in a diverse environment, not only in terms of gender, but also like people with different backgrounds. It's more fun in such a workplace. Is there a difference between younger men and older, or do you have any stats like that? No.
Well, I can just say, I mean, we see actually with younger men also the view that we're more ahead than we are, meaning that also younger men think that we are more gender equal and more diverse than we actually are. That sort of manifests down through the ages. However, we do see surveys that young people in general, young people coming into the labor market, appreciate value-based, value-driven organizations and inclusion diversity. So that's probably increasing. But the perception of how far we've come, that doesn't seem to change with age.
Okay. My next guest here is going to be the CEO of Nix. So do you have any questions? You can actually hang around and ask him a question if you want to. So here's Stefan. It's all yours.
Hi. We do have a question. Are we going to ask it now?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So you asked us if you were in the board, or if the board would ask the question. And imagine that we just learned there's a way we can be more innovative, grow faster, and make up to a 15% more profit. I would actually ask the CEO for a really clear action plan how to get there and how to make the gender equality happen. Because we have all the data, we have all the knowledge that we actually need. So there should be no more excuses. There should be an action plan. So I would ask for the action plan to actually be an equal company.
So actually, it doesn't have to start at the CEO level. It can start at the board level, demanding a plan from the management to present.
Yes, because it has to do with profit and growth. So
thank you very much for joining. We can continue on that topic a little bit. Thank you, ladies of FMCG.
Thank you.
Where can we find more information? You can post your website in the chat.
Yeah, we can do that. ladiesofFMCG.se.
Yeah, please. Yeah.
Thank you.
Very much. Thanks.
Bye.
What do you say? Gender equality. Where is that on the agenda for you in terms of running Nix? And by the way, Stefan is the CEO, the chairman, so we know each other well. We're gonna,
yes, I think I come from Unilever before Nix and P&G before that. While those organizations are not perfect on gender equality, I think they had a lot of different programs and actions in place to drive gender equality. So for me, it comes pretty natural to drive that matter as well. So I fully agree with what is said, and I think that the biggest challenge is sort of how to include women in the recruitment process of more senior roles, because they might not be as outspoken with what they want as men, and then that might be perceived as that they wouldn't want it. So I think a crucial point is to have very regular development discussions where you can get those questions up on the table, so you know what people want with their careers, and that might or might not be advancement if we talk like in the hierarchies, but at least knowing and given forums for everyone to speak up, because the way these forums are normally held caters to how men stereotypically behave, and sort of how can you then get or change that. And I think that's sort of back to sort of the action plans you need. Those are the concrete actions, because if you just look at, like you said before, equality as a number, then females or women are vastly overrepresented in this industry. But again, once you come a few
in the leadership. Okay. Thank you so much, Veronica and Hannah, for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
And we will move on to kind of how to attract talent in a more broader sense. You came from Unilever, you joined Nix, a small startup, which I'm very happy for because I'm the chairman. So it's our win and their loss. But what kind of made you make that step, go from a safe career to this, uncertain startup?
So I think it's the opportunity of joining a journey which is the entire company. If you look at like the United Nations goals, what they want to achieve, so that we have a couple of challenges on the path. Even if the bigger corporations also try to resolve for them, they are a little bit part of the problem as well. And it might be expensive or difficult to change what you already know into helping in solving any of these challenges. Whereas a company like Nix, who basically is founded on the idea of doing better, that journey becomes more inspiring to join, I think.
So tell us about Nix shortly, 1 minute.
So Nix is a company founded by Niklas, whose name is on the pack. He was pre-diabetic, wanted to eat more healthy to avoid diabetes, thought the food was boring because he enjoyed sweets. So he started making products without sugar. And now we are on a journey to sort of give consumers healthy snacking without compromising on the taste or mouthfeel that goes in candy, chocolate, and ice cream.
Okay. And you decided to join that. Why are big companies generally bad at innovation? And why can't they create bubbles of this purpose-driven innovation within a large organization?
So I think it stems a lot from the ownership and what is viewed as success in companies. Big companies like Unilever, P&G, they're on the stock market. They're expected to deliver growth. Once they have become so big as they are today, and growth has slowed down, so they grow 1-2% per year. If you want to deliver more shareholder value, if you equals that to money, you need to cut costs. If you cut costs, it's easy to lose that creativity that gives you that type of innovation. Plus, if you are one of the world's biggest manufacturer of something, you will be good at it. Anything you will innovate will, at least in the short term, be lower profitability. And again, back to where I started, if profitability is important, then you're not interested.
You're cannibalizing your own profits. Okay. Interesting. And you are also hiring, and you were hiring at Unilever. So what's the difference? How do you go about? What's your USPs for getting people on board compared to that when you were a big company?
Yes, I think now the biggest challenge is if you want to recruit more senior people, because they might be sitting on a life situation that makes them less willing to jump on the new and exciting and smaller company if they come from a very safe background. Again, generally speaking. as for new people, I mean, we have a great platform with a brand that many recognize and wants to join.
Yeah.
And we have that cause that people wants to follow.
Yeah.
Whereas in Unilever, you could, of course, come with a big, well-known brand that anybody who wanted sort of a safe career could join and have a nice life, so to speak.
Okay. But still, you discussed a little bit why you took the step. Any advice to kind of companies, big or small, when it comes to attracting talent? What did you need to nail, except for gender equality, of course, and diversity in general?
I think the important point for smaller companies is to be able to convey the journey that they are on, and how board and owners will be part of that journey.
Yeah.
Because I think, again, going back to myself, if you don't know that there are proper commitments behind the company, unless a cool brand that you see in social media, then it might be difficult to join the journey.
Okay, and you talked a little bit about being listed and that being a disadvantage. Is it actually not the size of the company, but rather the ownership model, or is it?
I think it is the way the companies perceive value. I think that's the main point, and the stock markets tend to look at profit. And whereas, of course, it's crucial to have a sound business model that will generate cash at some point. But again, if you truly believe that by solving a problem like Nix is doing, that you will be rewarded for it, but the financial KPIs should not be your first and second thing to look at.
Yeah, and if you look at it the other way, before joining a company, would it be a good idea to look up the ownership model and what the owners want with the company and what they're?
I think that's crucial. And also understanding, again, I was recruited as CEO, right? And then it might be very sensitive with owners who stay operational in the company, and will they, or are they ready to hand away the keys to the company and let someone else be part of driving that? That's important to understand.
That's a totally different, or that's another situation actually, when you come in and take over from the startup founders and actually gonna take care of their baby and run it. So that's a particular situation, of course. Any other advice to kind of people in their careers right now? What should you think of if you're 25, 30, 35?
I think if I target a little bit more, people have maybe been 5 years in a career, especially in the bigger companies.
Yes.
Basically, the only way of looking at success in those companies is how much money you make.
Yeah.
When you go to a smaller company, there might be other things because you join. Maybe it's also a potential higher financial reward in the longer term.
Yeah.
But I think it's daring to take that step of not reviewing your paycheck every month as a testimony of how good you are. Because that kind of boxes you in a very narrow career path.
So you mean the end goal of your life is not to make as much money as possible?
Could be, but there could be different routes to it.
Okay.
Not saying it is, but even if it is, there are many ways there, and it's easy to be linear.
Okay. Great. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
That was a short chat.
Do I get to taste one of the fish foods?
You can stay around, actually. We're going to do some tasting now, so please stay around. Stefan, you can join us in the tasting, actually. That would be great. See the screen?
Perfect. So, I'm EMIL, co-founder of Hooked, and we are developing alternatives to seafood. And say hi to Bob, who is our head of purpose. He's very concerned about the high content of chemicals in him, and that the rapidly increasing consumption of seafood is destroying his ocean. But what if we could create seafood that contains all the health benefits and excluded all the bad chemicals that we also can scale without harming Bob? Hooked is developing plant-based seafood where taste is king and nutrition is queen. Our first product, the tuna, is already finalized, and our CTO, Peter, is working day and night with our second product, a salmon, and it's expected to be launched in Q1 2021. You can also see our playful, rebellious, and authentic brand, designed to attract the modern consumer that require more transparency than ever before. And this is something big food corporations cannot recreate. Our shredded texture makes the product perfect to use in a wide variety of dishes, such as pasta, salads, wraps, bowls, sandwiches, and more. And in order to give the consumer the best first experience of our products, we will start by serving them in restaurants with credible chefs, starting with the tuna now in December. We will then enter the ready-to-eat segment, and in 2022, we will launch our first consumer products in grocery stores. And our forecast shows a projected 2.5 million euros in revenue our first year. And during this time, we will also save 1,000 tons of CO2 emissions and the life of 50,000 salmons and tunas.
And plant-based seafood is currently a white space with no established players yet. Just like plant-based meat was 5 years ago, only waiting for the right products to unlock it. With the plant-based market CAGR of 15%, the plant-based seafood segment in Europe is forecasted to accelerate and reach 2 billion euros within 2025. But who are we competing with to win this European market? First, we have Vegan Seastar that offers a vegan sashimi with 0% protein. Secondly, we have Good Catch, focusing on the US market and the US consumer with a vegan shredded tuna. Then Nestlé just piloted their first glass jar vegan tuna on a small scale on the Swiss market, but with a brand that is not as authentic and rebellious as Hooked is. And have you ever tasted plant-based seafood before? Then you would know that there's a lot of room for improvement when it comes to taste. Hooked has a high nutrition, a competitive price, and superior taste and texture. But don't take our word for it, take our customers' word for it, who has tasted it and approved the product so far. And also, more importantly, take Gustaf's word for it that is about to try Hooked tuna versus the leading plant-based seafood company in the world right now, Good Catch, and their tuna. So, Gustaf, are you ready? Do you have the sample?
We are ready. So which one?
Go back to you.
Yeah, we'll start with the competition, I think. Didn't taste much.
Was there anything on it?
No, it was tasteless. Okay, try this one.
Do you have it? Yeah. Do you have it to eat just a pure product as well?
No, only with the cracker and the tomato. That makes it kind of really hard to make the distinction. It's more tasty, definitely. So what is it made of?
It's made of soy isolate,
yeah,
and seaweed and the sea algae to get the right seed taste. And then you have sunflower oil to get the fatty mouthfeel.
Perfect. And why did you choose to go for tuna as the first product and not salmon or something else?
The tuna is one of the most.
Sorry.
It is one of the most consumed products when it comes to seafood in Europe. Just next head to head with salmon.
Yeah. And we have a last question from the audience. Why soy?
So soy is a great source of protein, just nutrition-wise, and it's also very easy to work with product development-wise. So it doesn't have the aftertaste, and it has a good thick texture that was easy to work with for our first products. But we want to say, we see soy is overrepresented in the plant-based category right now, so we are looking into alternatives now when developing the plant-based salmon. But to get the right price and to make the biggest impact, widely, we are using soy now for the first product.
And which parts of the world? The last question. Which part of the world will you launch? You said it's going to be in restaurants soon. So which restaurant?
Yes, we are launching now in Sweden in just a few months, in food service mainly. And then we plan a very fast expansion to Denmark and UK and Germany, which are big, important markets to win early on to win the wider European market.
Thank you so much for joining. You have more questions in the chat, so you can continue the discussion there. And I would like to I know Nadav and Greg are somewhere in the audience. I would like to ask you to join the conversation up for the last 15 minutes of today. We're going to discuss the next big thing in investing in food tech. Thank you, Stefan, for joining us.
Thank you. And while waiting for them, when tasting the pure product, your product was the clear winner of these two alternatives.
Thank you. That's exactly what I wanted to hear.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Welcome, Greg.
Thank you.
Tell us a bit about you and what you're doing and where you're based.
I work for DSM Venturing. That's the venture capital arm of DSM, which is a very well-known nutrition company, as many people know. Our corporate venturing group is about open innovation. We invest in startups that align with our innovation strategies. And what I'm responsible for is our health and wellness and nutrition investing in basically North America. I have a colleague in Europe who handles the Europe and some of our Israeli investments. We also invest across other DSM businesses out of our venture group, which would include solar investments in solar field, additive manufacturing, or 3D printing, as some people call it, and both animal and human nutrition.
Okay. So how many companies do you have in your portfolio?
Well over 35 active companies in our portfolio. We've been doing corporate venturing in DSM for over 17 years. So we have a system that works quite well for us. A typical year, we would do 6 to 8, possibly as high as 10 new investments. Yeah. Our sweet spot is really Series A investments, 3 to 5 million euros or US dollars. We also do some seed investments and occasionally public company investments. Mm-hmm. So on an average year, and I would say this is not an average year, just 2020 has been strange for everybody. But again, typically we would do probably between 7 and 10 new investments a year.
And Nadav, welcome. Where are you based?
I'm in Tel Aviv.
Tel Aviv, Israel. Welcome. Tell us a little bit about Peakbridge.
So Peakbridge is a global fund investing in. Peakbridge is a fund manager, and it's a global fund investing all over. Happy to co-invest with Greg as well. And Peakbridge was created by two, I would say, both of us founding members, managing partners. We grew up in the food industry. So my business partner grew up at Nestle. He managed this. He was the first recruit of the Nestle corporate funds. He did it for 18 years, and I grew up in the food industry 3 generations, and I started my own fund in Israel. Yeah. And we decided to do Peakbridge, a global fund investing all over. And one of the greatest investments that we ever did since inception is a popular company in Sweden and now in the US named Nix. So I'm half Swede now. So
okay, guys, yeah, we love that. Guys, I have to plug in my computer in an outlet. So I'll let you speak a little bit about. I mean, the food system is in the big transformation in many ways. Could you just elaborate a little bit on where you think the biggest change will come in the next few years, and what you're looking at, what kind of companies you're looking for? Starting with you, Greg. And I'll just go and find something.
Sure. Well, one of the biggest trends we see is the personalization trend, which everybody talks about, from everything from sneakers to cars to furniture you can buy at home. However, with personalized nutrition, it's much more complicated than just colors and styles, because everybody is different, right? As we all know. We can all eat the same foods, and basically our gut, our microbiome will process them differently, have different impacts on us. But you see personalization in food, we're really at the tip of the iceberg, in my opinion. It's an area we're very interested in DSM. We've done 7 investments in that area over the past couple of years, so we have a lot of activity going on in that space. And again, what we're looking for is things that align with our innovation strategy there.
Could you give some examples of innovative personalized nutrition companies?
Sure. There's literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them, but some of the ones that we're involved in is there's a company called Tespo. These are US-based companies now I'm talking about. Tespo, which is it's really a home health hub. It's a liquid vitamin shot dispenser that can sit in your home that links to all kinds of other health data that you can provide it. You can link digital devices to the app. A blood pressure machine or a scale or a sleep apnea machine or whatever you want to link digitally, your Fitbit, and then that information is correlate it and analyze and provide you feedback based on what you're taking. So that would be Tespo. Another one would be Panaceutics. It's a company that is making smoothies, so pouches, 4-ounce and 2-ounce pouches of a food-based ingredient that you can customize what goes in there based on the analysis you would do with the company. We have a couple of software plays in this space. We're not a software company, so it's an area we're looking to partner with that help analyze what you should take, but also very importantly, what you should be doing to retain your customers, because a lot of people talk about personalized nutrition and how they want to get into it, but they're not really addressing how are you going to retain your customers and create that brand loyalty.
Yeah. Okay.
Nadav, you have a lot of experience in this space too, right? So.
Yeah, recurring revenue is every investor's dream. Okay, Nadav, what do you say? What are the themes you are most interested in?
So, food tech is so vast, and you can go from seed to an IoT espresso machine, and it's just too vast. We invest in 3 different buckets. We invest in innovative food, which Nick's fall in this buckets, but we invest only if there is a proprietary and IP behind it, and very happy that Nick said a couple of proprietary ingredients, especially in the US, and doing pretty well there. Our second bucket is biotech, and the intersection between biotech and food tech and food in general. Yeah. And the third bucket, which I would like to share with you a little more about, is the data bucket. I come from a food family. My late grandfather started the oil business in Israel in 1933, and we became the largest producers of fats, oils, and margarines, which is a commodity. So I have a little bit of a perspective on food and food production, food industry, and how, excuse my French, but how primitive it is and how conservative it is. And in the last 50 years, it was all about scale. It was all about making more for less. So you have the pressures of the retailers, the wholesalers, and you try to produce more for less and to be more effective. But this is changing, especially with the power of the consumers. And consumers are demanding different things, and the food industry has to change. And by making using the same methods and doing the same and producing maybe more efficiently, but doing the same thing, this will not last for long. Yeah. And you can name so many themes that are changing, from plant-based to alternative meats to breeding to personalized nutrition to better supply chain to waste. All those things at the end of the day need one thing. And the one thing that all of them in common need, is data. Because to my point, the industry is still so primitive by using data, that the more data that we bring to personalized nutrition, to breeding, to reducing waste, to more efficient supply chain, to developing new products. Do you know that CPGs in general, it takes them 2 years to develop a new product, and then, about 5 years to develop and launch new products. But then statistically, 90% of the new products will fail in the next 2 years.
Okay. This is a really interesting area. And one kind of data is, of course, understanding what the consumers want, so you can produce the right products. Another kind of data would be the personal data from your blood sample that gives you information on exactly what food supplements you would have in the personalized nutrient example that Greg mentioned. Other kinds of data, what data will be valuable or is valuable in the future? These were 2 examples, but do you have others?
So I think that, sure, go ahead, Greg.
No, I was going to say, please go ahead.
You're too polite.
So I think that data should be used. The low-hanging fruit for using data is especially with climate change, is securing supply chain. The CPGs are now getting into breeding and genetic mapping genetic crops and sources, because the Mars and the Unilevers and the PepsiCo understand that if they don't go back to their supply chain and secure their resources by using data, by the way, they will not have supply chain. They won't have enough raw materials to produce what they do, and especially at COVID time. There's a big issue in the food industry globally to get ingredients and produce the regular things that they used to do, especially with the climate change. How can you really manage a global supply chain without today or in the near future blockchain or total transparency to your company?
Yeah, this is supply chain data. Greg, we're gonna give an example or?
Well, I just to build on what Nadav said, I think consumers are demanding a lot more data about what they're eating and where it's coming from and how it's grown or how the animals are treated, and sharing that data with them in an efficient and intuitive way for consumers to find it. There's always a small group of people sort of leading the charge, and this is one of the things we sometimes fall into in our space in nutrition, is a lot of the people I talk to are very nutrition oriented and will say, well, what do you think about this particular offering and how people can access their data? And they love it because they pay attention to that space. But that is quite different than mass market acceptance and general population acceptance, where people aren't intuitive enough or don't have the background to be able to drill down and find out where this ingredient or food is grown or how it's taken care of, and figuring out ways to provide that data to consumers in a format and a method that is easy for them to quote unquote digest, meaning really understand, is one of the challenges we're facing. And again, we often suffer from, we're in the nutrition business or we're in the food business and we think everyone wants to know this information this way because we find it interesting. And you can fall into that trap, and very often I see startups falling into that trap where they think they've got a great mousetrap or offering or service they want to provide, and it's really quite niche and narrow in the end result. And so one of the challenges we find in this whole personalization for food and of course supplements, which is of great interest and ingredients to DSM, is how do you present that information in a way for the mass market that really is the ultimate goal, because personalization offers a tremendous health benefits to people if we could roll it out across large groups of population, because you certainly can impact your health. That's been proven. How you do it and how you communicate it, and data is a key, as Nadav said, in many aspects. And that's one of the challenges we see a lot of companies facing, is what to do with the data to get it to the consumer.
Yeah, mass data. Yeah, we need to wrap up because the time is up, unfortunately. Nadav and Greg, could you post in the chat your contact details or your website so people know where to reach you? And Greg, there's a question to you and ask you to write the names of the startups you mentioned.
Sure.
So you can share it with everyone.
Yep.
We could talk for hours on what's up, what's going to be big in food, because the food industry is so big. And there's, as Nadav pointed out, from seed to fork. There are so many opportunities for innovation when it comes to packaging, transportation, how do you produce these products, and also, of course, you can spin up really, really innovative products now. Fermentation is a very, very interesting area. I have a cheese here that is plant-based. It wasn't possible to make before, now it's possible. So there are so many possibilities, and we hope that more entrepreneurs understand how big, important, and in need of change the food system is, and kind of joins us to innovate and pitch these investors and the rest of us for money so we can make change. Okay, that's all for today. Thank you so much for joining. I want to remind you that the Hopin platform makes it possible for you to actually speed date one-on-one. You can find interesting people, you can invite them to chat rooms and start making connections and creating business value and value for the world. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.